Could Zack Durfee be an all-conference player in 2024? We've got just the man for the job to help us figure that out.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. And with us today, unfortunately, the camera's a little blurry, but it is what it is. We've got former UW edge rushers coach Eric Schmidt with us today. We're going to have a great time. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs help find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Eric, we're so excited to have you here with us. Thank you so much for doing this. And we're going to start off on just a real fun note with some guys that, obviously you are now the defensive coordinator with the San Diego State Aztecs. I can't talk today. This is a wonderful start to our day. But let's talk about Zack Durfee, somebody who, as all Husky fans know, was put in an unfortunate situation by the NCAA in 2023, got to play a little bit towards the end of the year, but feels like he's primed to take a major jump with a huge just step up in his role in 2024. But you're the expert, so we're going to defer to you on all this.
Yeah, obviously Zach would have been a huge plus for us, last fall, and the timing for him, really couldn't have been any worse for just kind of how the rules and how the NCAA and the appeals process was handling it. But I think Husky fans will be fired up. Once they see Zach, he's everything he does, just screams that he can be a really good football player. I'm talking weight room things. When he's doing all the running, change of direction, all that kind of stuff, like he has all the tools that you look for, in a really good edge player. And, the thing with him is, and maybe it's a little bit of, a blessing for Zach, and he probably, I know he looked at it this way. It wasn't ideal, but he was able to take a year and really learn the position. He was a high school quarterback. He was a basketball player in high school. So it's not like he's, growing up, playing five technique, playing on the edge and doing those things his entire life. So for him to be able to get all those reps against really good tackles, that we had last year, day in and day out, that really, helped him become a better player. And that experience, I think it's going to help him gain a lot of confidence and be a springboard for him into the season here this year, and then also into the fall season when it starts.
Lars, what do you got?
And so, kind of in that vein, I'm having to imagine that unfortunate situation open up a spot for Jacob Lane to get some more playing time. But how much did Jacob, with or without Zach's availability or not, kind of how much did he grow, and what allowed him to kind of get some playing time towards the end of the season that we saw?
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for Jacob Lane and his future. There in on Montlake, he is to me, just size, speed. Started to develop some toughness and some competitiveness. I think at this level, he's just grown in that part. From when we first started recruiting him, really when we got to Washington, and then all the way through to see his progression to where he was. He's playing really important roles as an 18-year-old kid in huge games. Pac-12 championships, Sugar Bowls, national championships, and looks the part. You watch those games, and he's showing up around the quarterback and hitting them, getting to breathing on that guy. A lot. So, and he's just, just at the start here too, as well, of what I think can be, a really tremendous career. So I'm excited for him and to see where he's at now as he, everything he was doing a year ago was, the first time through, he hadn't gotten the reps and all those types of things. So now that he has, that experience, and usually when guys get on the field earlier in their career, like their progression to year two is really sped up because they know what to expect. They've been through it a little bit. They've got a taste of the competition, so to speak. So, and he's a guy that can play either side. Like his body type and his athleticism is really tremendous. So I'm excited for Jacob, obviously a hometown guy, and he wanted to be a Husky more than anything else. And now for him to kind of live out a dream similar, to like a guy like Sakai last year, I think, I'm super pumped for him and a big fan of his.
Another guy who we're a huge fan of on this podcast is Lance Holtzclaw. And we were really impressed with his progression, especially what we saw during fall camp last year. And then, of course, we saw it in spurts in 2023. Just another guy who, what kind of growth have you seen from him? What kind of role do you see him possibly playing with this new staff in 2024?
Yeah, I think Lance is, his biggest challenge, for him, and he knew it coming into the program, was just going to be to get his body in a position where, he could go play the run and do some of the physical things that you ask that position to do. So I think the pass rush stuff, I mean, he's proven, I go back to the Apple Cup game. We put him in late in the game. It was one play. He got a sack on that play. I mean, that tells you something right there as far as, what he can do rushing off the edge. He did some things late in the Texas game too, where we put him in where guys were getting wore out a little bit. And we feel like, hey, man, he gave us the best shot at that time to be able to go put heat on the quarterback. So, Lance's biggest challenge is going to be in the weight room in the off season, just, the nutrition piece, all that kind of stuff. He gets his body into a position where, he can be, play the run, play on a tight end, play over a tackle and things like that. He's going to be just fine. So same types of things there. Like I said, like those guys, I think, all throughout the year understood that, hey, they're going to lose, our top three guys after this year. Like, hey, this next cycle is going to be my window to be able to get in there and really, solidify my role on that team. So definitely excited for Lance here too, as well.
And then one last guy that kind of became an edge rusher this past season, but it's really just like a defensive lineman in general, is Voi Tunuufi. What was it about him that kind of made him excel? Because I know he was a edge rusher, at least in high school, maybe kind of a pseudo edge rusher in high school. How much did you know about his edge rushing abilities prior, and how much do you feel he grew this past season in that role?
Yeah, initially really didn't have a great feel for what Voi was as far as playing off the edge and playing wider, farther away from the ball. But just watching him, in 2022 and just seeing him on the sidelines at times when I really felt like, hey, man, this guy's in our top 11. Like, he's a guy that should be out on the field and helping us win football games. We just felt like, hey, we really, wanted to dual teach him and make sure that, hey, if there was an opportunity for us to be able to use him, not just in our sub package, but in our base package too, as well, as an edge, that we could do that. And obviously not knowing exactly what was going to happen with the Zack Durfee situation too, as well. We felt like, hey, Voi would be an insurance policy for us. He could, move to the edge and be able to do a lot of the same things that Zach can do. So I think ultimately it was, Voi's got a skill set that's pretty dynamic. It's versatile. You can use him in a lot of different spots, and that just tells you the type of player he is. And then to be able to learn all those spots up and down our line of scrimmage. I mean, he knew all 5 spots, and I think that was something that was really impressive. We got into our big stuff. He could play any of the 3 interior spots, and he could play either of the edge spots too as well. So definitely, he's coming into the to the home stretch here, and I think he'll be, a guy that's going to be playing his best football. At the end of last year, it was that way, and it'll definitely springboard, I feel like, for him. He has a lot of things that he wants to accomplish here this final year.
So with that being said, let's jump into the 2023 season a little bit. Right after a message from our friends over at Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free, and that includes us. all of us really here over at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness, the NBA, the MLB, and lots more, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. So, Eric, the 2023 season was obviously special for so many reasons. And we had Ron McKeefrey on the show last week. And one of the things that we asked him was, what was his favorite moment? And he said, as a strength coach for him, it was going down to Corvallis and the way that you guys toughed out that game against Oregon State in the rain. But for you, what was just one particular moment that stood out in any game, one particular game, anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. Obviously, we were in a lot of close games. I think the Pac-12 championship. Obviously, being able to pull that game out. There's a lot of adversity there. We had, we played a really emotional, hard-fought game the week before in the Apple Cup, and then to be able to come back and have to get back up and regroup and play in the Pac-12 championship game on a Friday, and just the way our guys responded coming out of the gates and playing well and getting a lead. And then, late in the game, once again, just having some adversity and being able to, really be at your best when your best was needed and playing well in the fourth quarter, I thought was really a special moment for our guys. And just, I think everybody in our locker room, really believed and felt good going into that game. I know there was a lot of outside noise there as far as, how people felt like the outcome of that game would be, but just how our guys handled that week, and how we played that Friday night, I think was just a great, accumulation of what our guys had done that entire year. For them to go in those big moments and be able to finish it off was awesome to see.
And kind of in that similar vein, what did the USC game mean for you? Because obviously I know with everything with Zion, what he had to go through that week leading up to it, and then what he does in that game. I know I'm kind of cheating a little bit by going and mentioning somebody.
Oh no, that was going to be my next question as well. Yeah,
but I'm just curious, what was that like? That kind of week and a half like for you, and kind of how did you guys manage that with him?
Yeah, no, I think those are things that there's not a playbook for, right? I think the biggest thing is Zion really showed a lot, I think, to our entire team, about, how important, not only his family back home in Hawaii was, but how important and, how important the structure, that we had built there at Washington that could help him and support him too as well. I thought was really special. And I think, just guys rallying around him and him having the, the maturity and the courage and the strength, really, to be able to, it's hard sometimes when you're a 23, 24. I mean, it's hard when you're a 45-year-old guy to be vulnerable, right? With your teammates and, to cry and to, just show that vulnerability. And I think it really, was a testament to, the guys in the room and how, how they cared for Zion, how he cared for them. And it meant a lot to him. You could tell, after that game, like, anybody would be emotionally spent, and he was emotionally spent, at the end of that game. He had been through a lot, the last 10 days. And, the play that he made in that game, the strip sack fumble, before halftime was probably, maybe one of the 5 or 6 most important plays of the season, really for us. So for him to be able to do that, but I just think he just showed so much, maturity and so much this thoughtfulness as far as, he really was able to talk to our guys and to our coaches from the heart and tell them not only what his father meant to him, but also, what it meant to him to be around the guys there and the staff and the coaches and the organization. And it was just truly, a special deal and authentic and just as, is why you coach, to be able to have those moments with him. And, those are things now that just kind of, as you solve problems together and go through situations like that, it just brings people together. And it was just a testament to the type of person that Zion is.
So one thing I'm really curious about, because you talked about the Pac-12 championship game a little bit, I want to kind of circle back around to that first matchup with Oregon, and even back to in 2022, because for so long, and obviously the Huskies won the Joe Moore Award last season, but for so long the talk was about Oregon's offensive line, and then in such a big moment, 2022, you see Bralen Trice come through with the sack, and then a couple different times you saw him get pressure, and not even just him, just the entire defensive line get pressure in all the right moments against Oregon in that first game in October. Just what is that kind of moment like for you when all the talk is about the group on the other side and you see your guys come through in such a big moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a certain level of pride and performance, you know what I mean, in the culture and in the defense there at Washington. I mean, there's been you walk up and down the hallways, you know what I mean, and the names and the records and things like that. Like, there's a lot of tradition and pride, you know what I mean, in those lockers and in those seats. And I think, you know, all of our guys feel that way. And there's just so many plays now, you know, just talking to you guys, the 3rd and 1 play, you know, that MJ made to turn it into 4th and 3. And then we get the stop on the next play. And then, you know, obviously we go down and score in 2 plays, but that play by MJ, you know, late in the game, you know, was super important. And then the play, like you just mentioned too, Roman, the play before the field goal, I mean, Bralen Trice, you know, just being able to really just bite, scratch, and claw his way to the quarterback there and force Bo to throw kind of off platform and make a poor throw and then having that be, you know what I mean, in that stadium when you're kicking anything over 40 yards, it's not for sure a guarantee. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you look at those plays and just, you know, I mean, the pride that our guys have, like, they're going to play with a lot of desire and a lot of effort, because I just think it means a lot, you know, I mean, to those players to have that W on their helmet. I think Drew Fowler said something after, you know, I was already down here in San Diego, like, hey, it's not about, you know, who's upstairs, it's about who's downstairs, you know what I mean, in that facility. And that's where the players are housed off it. And that brotherhood, I think, just shows through, you know what I mean, year in and year out.
Definitely, kind of within that brotherhood vein, what did a leader like? Because obviously, there's 2 different types of leaders. There's the veteran that maybe ZTF was more years in the program, and then there's Bralen Trice, who leads by production and leads by example. Have you ever coached a kid like Bralen? Just because I remember everybody that we talked to, it's his motor. He doesn't have nobody has a motor like Bralen, and it's not just coach, because we see it every single game where maybe he doesn't have a sack, but he's leading the country in pressure the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, you know, he's definitely a guy that week in and week out, like, people are game planning for. I mean, he's getting so much attention and protections, and then just how teams tried to attack us with quick game and things like that. You know, the best thing I can tell you about Bralen, and I've never had this happen before in 20 years of coaching, is, you know, the last 3 games of the year, he never came out of the football game. You know, and I know I've heard some things with Crosby, with the Raiders and things like that, you know, there's some of that in the NFL, but for a guy to play as hard as he does and just spill it on the line, you know what I mean, play in and play out, for him to be able to do that and not come out of a football game is special, you know what I mean, and tells you a lot about him. And at the end of the game, you know what I mean, I think that's, as the season went along, you saw people start to fall off, and some of the injuries and the fatigue, and people start moving slower. That guy just stays at a high level, and he doesn't wear out, you know, like other people do. And that's what makes him special. It's not like, you know, Zion's like super mobile and he can contort his upper body in ways that, you know what I mean, that I just, you don't see average people or normal people do. Bralen's, you know what I mean, superpower, or what makes him special, is that he just has an absolutely burning desire inside of him to not lose. You know what I mean? Like, that pride and how hard he plays, and it's consistent. Like, he's the absolute same guy, you know what I mean, every day, whether, you know what I mean, he's running down a play and on scout team on a Wednesday morning practice, or he's doing it, you know, in the national championship game in Houston. Like, he's the same guy all the time. So super excited for him. I mean, you look at, you know, the other thing you look at, I know you guys talked about a little bit before we were on the air, but the combine and things like that, like, you know, our guys that went there, it wasn't like they were training for 4 months for that thing. And they just got done. A guy like Bralen just got done playing 15 games. probably playing around 800 reps, and then he's got to go turn around and say, all right, now all of a sudden I got to worry about a 40 and, all those types of things. And obviously seeing all those guys, perform at a high level. Once again, it comes back to the brotherhood word, right? Like it's just that, that standard of excellence, that all those guys push themselves to. And I know one thing that we talked about all the time there was player led. And I just think, Kalen's approach and the types of guys that we had in the locker room, it was a perfect storm there. Like those two things really meshed. And it's awesome to see kind of, after everything's been over here in the last few weeks, like those guys go out now and perform like they have, like I said, without a lot of training, without a lot of time to be able to sit back and say, all right, I'm going to train for the combine now for a long time. Those guys were playing, in a football game, probably it's less than 2 months ago, they were still playing.
Eric, we know we got to get you out of here, but we got one more question for you. Give us your 60 second for each, or 60 second in total for what any NFL team would be getting in your edge rushers in Bralen Trice and ZTF.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, man, I think I'll say this right now, and I really believe this in my heart with both those guys is, I always think you come into a locker room and, the vets will tell you in a hurry in those locker rooms, those situations, like what type of players the rookies are. Those are both guys that the vets are going to want to play with because they're going to be in there. They're going to be detailed. They've been pros for the last 2 years. They're going to take notes. They're going to, be early to the facility, stay late. They're going to do all the things they need to do in the weight room and getting their bodies right so they're available every single week. And I can just see both those guys, wherever they end up, some of the vets on that roster being like, hey, man, I'll play with Zion. I'll play with Bralen. Those guys are guys I know it means a lot to them. I love how they go about their business, and they're going to help our organization, win a championship. And that's the best thing to me. Like we had a motto when I was there. We always said, hey, man, like the best edges in the country meet on Montlake. And those guys, when we put that up for the first time, the Jeremiah Martins, we haven't talked much about Mo Himes, but even Mo's, where Mo can be at next year. And, you throw the first kickoff in the national championship game, really both kickoffs, and watch what Mo's doing running down the field at, 6'5" and 255 pounds, man. It's impressive, So I just think, like I keep coming back to is, just the standard of excellence there and guys just holding each other accountable and iron sharpening iron. And you mentioned Coach McKeefer, what he's been able to do, while he was there too as well. I think that's some of the proof in the pudding with how those guys have been able to do in the combine without a lot of training is just the overall training they got day in and day out, from Ron there, the last 2 years. So definitely just feel like, hey, like those are the type of guys those organizations are going to get, and the players within that organization are going to love, having both of those guys as teammates.
Absolutely. Eric, thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic.
Appreciate you guys. All right.
And we're going to give a shout out to our friends over at LinkedIn, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, make the hire process even easier and quicker. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Lars, that was a great interview. Eric's just the man.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, we were talking about the top of the air. At least top 3 interviews in terms of substance and quality. Like
Absolutely.
in terms of not because that's what I told him. I don't know if it was while we were recording or beforehand, but it's like there's some things that coaches say that are straight up coach speak, just straight up like keep the main thing the main thing. I mean, I love Kalen, but that is the most coach speak of coach speak answers. But there are things where he will say, like, hey, he's the most coachable player, or this guy, or I mean, when he singled out Maurice Himes, where I was like, he didn't have to do that, right? I mean, But
Yeah, for
again,
sure.
it's a testament to character and also making sure, like, hey, don't forget about this guy that I might not be talking about as much. He could still be just as impactful as some of these other guys we're talking about.
So one thing that I'm really glad he brought up is because for all our YouTube viewers, it's our third segment was going to be UW edge rushers in the draft, and I'm glad we were able to get that last question in before he had to run to his meeting, and we really do appreciate him taking all the time that he did for us because he gave us a lot of great stuff. And one thing that he and I talked about down at Houston during media day was I asked him about Bralen Trice and I asked him to compare him to some of the other edge rushers like Jared Verse, like Chop Robinson in this draft, and obviously we saw Chop blow up the combine with his athletic testing. We saw Dallas Turner, Laya Tulatu do some really nice things. And Jared Verse, too, have just kind of been the darlings. And then, there are a whole lot of other edge rushers that have kind of overtaken Bralen, where it's something we talked about earlier this week. And as we kind of look at Bralen's draft stock moving forward, he's kind of fallen into the middle of the second round to the later of the second round, just kind of based on, the weight he was at the combine and just some of his other testing, which it was a bummer to see him looked like it was a thigh injury that he suffered at some point that probably hampered some numbers as well. But when we kind of look at, what Bralen is on the field, listening to Eric talk about him not miss a snap over the final 3 games of the season and compare him to Max Crosby, because that's exactly what he did with me the last time we spoke. And he said, yeah, they're getting they'd be getting the guy in Bralen with such a tremendous motor that he's going to dominate in the interview process. He's going to dominate when they look at him on film. And no matter where he goes in the draft, he's going to be a guy that can contribute for a long time because he just never, ever stops. And it's just really cool to hear him talk about that kind of stuff.
No, and I think the one reason why actually I like the Max Crosby example is because it's more realistic than saying, Will Anderson or first round, because Max Crosby was a 4th round pick. Now Bralen will obviously not be a 4th round pick. I'm not saying it's that level of comparison, but 4th and 2nd rounder, I mean, you can still find starters in both those. I mean, Bobby Wagner was a 2nd round pick. So
hey, you can find starters anywhere.
That's what I'm saying. So just because a guy isn't picked, top 15, let's say Jared Verse goes before him, which is one guy that noticed.
That's probably going to happen at this point.
But I've been on the other side of that train since before the season. You well know that, where I didn't view him in the same light. And so once you get to the NFL, that's where certain teams will be like, hey, maybe this guy was worth. I mean, was Trey Lance worth a top 3 pick? No, but is he a serviceable guy? Sure. So the NFL is full of hits and misses, right? In terms of where guys are taken, how they ended developing. The point that we're getting with Bralen is he's a guy that will, no matter where he's picked, come in and be a starter, or develop into a starter, I should say, to be clear.
Absolutely. And that's one thing where, because let's talk about Zion for a minute, where with Zion Tupuola-Fetui, it was great to hear Eric talk a little bit about, the USC game and that moment and everything that was, because that was such a special moment for this team and for Zion. And when you look at his draft stock, it's certainly going to be hampered by the fact that he's not able to test with the shoulder injury, and he was not going to be ready until June or July. But Lars, from somebody that you and I know very well, having spoken to him for multiple years at this point, he's just such a genuine guy, and to not only have that moment and be so open and be so vulnerable with his teammates, but to just kind of have that show up in his play at times. And just when Eric's talking about how coachable he is and how hard he works and everything that he wants to do to get better, that's really cool to see. And for somebody who's struggled through so much adversity through his time in college, where you can go back to when he ruptured his Achilles a couple of years ago, and especially coming after what his season was in 2020, he was getting hype as a 1st round pick. Now he's probably going to hear his name called on day 3. And it's just cool to see that hasn't changed who he is, and to just see how hard he's worked throughout this process, no matter what.
Yeah, well, and I'll peel back the curtain even a little bit more. So when Eric Schmidt mentioned about it being a player-led program and the guys in the bottom of, where the players are housed, like that's where the program is actually run.
Yeah.
Is a testament to Zion. And I'll say actually Bralen, but for 2 different reasons, where in 21, after Lloyd left, with and Chris Peterson and Jimmy Lake and all that stuff, that Zion was went home to Hawaii and was considering moving on, going to another school. Yeah. Would he go to UCLA with Akaika? And actually, in the end, everybody felt that Zion was going to come back because what Washington means to him is more than what words can describe. And I think that showed out under the last 2 years, because then I remember talking to Schmidt before the 22 season, like, hey, what does Zion kind of got to do? Like he's like, well, he's got to be a run defender. He's got to really learn some of the stuff. And it was almost like, really, he's been here for so long. Like, I know, I was one of the first to say he's got to get better as a run defender, but it's still like it wasn't to me like it actually became like a tough parent coaching. And then
Yeah.
the other side of that is, hey, you can give them tough love, but then be there for them in the exact same level. And Eric Schmidt did to a T, because that's what Zion told me. He's like, hey, look, like Schmidt, the way he's been able to coach me, and vice versa. When Schmidt would talk to Zion, like, hey, I can coach him harder because he knows, and we have this relationship now. And so I think it's a testament just to kind of how the evolution of the program came together. Because this past season wasn't just a one-off that came out of nowhere. It was built from 22 and carried all the way through 23.
Absolutely. And Lars, I feel like that's a great place to wrap this one up, because that was such a fantastic chat. And to Eric in his new role at San Diego State as their DC, we wish him nothing but the best, because he was nothing but good to us during his time at Washington. And Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the Everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We're going to have so many more fun guests like Eric coming on throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. Make sure you like the video, hit that little bell notifications icon so you make sure that you're notified every time we post a new video. And like the video as well, make sure you leave a comment down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and tell us who you might want to see as a guest. Because again, like we said, we've got so many ideas. We're trying to see who else we can book. So please make sure you chime in. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Monday.